Hello, everyone. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is April 7th, year 2022, 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I trust you're all doing wonderfully well. And it's so good to be with you here all the way live in the chat here. As much as I like these extended talks that are recorded due to time zone differences, I'm referring to the incredible conversation that I had with Mr. Pele and Taylor. It's nothing can replace this live cast that I enjoy here. I really am, I think, built to perform on a live stage, a live platform. So I welcome everybody here in the live chat. I was perusing it prior to going live with you today, and I saw some interesting comments. One by the Mobsterful wondering if Dave Grohl, Grohl, for those of you who are not familiar with the Foo Fighters, or earlier than that, Nirvana, which I'll talk about in a moment. But he's the leader of the band, the Foo Fighters. And the reason I spell his name is that's a German name. And I'm going to be making I think the unique assertion. It was an insight I came upon several months ago, but I think as more research is done on my part, and the more we find out about the deep state, and there's more research about Paperclip, right? People think they know everything there is to know about Operation Paperclip because they read the Annie Jacobson book on it, right? And that's part of the function of these mainstream authors who are now moving in this field. They say, well, this is how the JFK assassination went down. This is how 9/11. This is how the poisoner in chief operated, Sidney Gottlieb. Move along, folks. There's nothing here to see. Well, you know what? That's just the beginning. That's where we start. And I'll give you another example of that. For many people, not just of the Foo Fighter grunge Seattle sound generation, but even my contemporaries. My parents would probably know about it because this Foo Fighter meme came out in my parents, in some cases for your grandparents, the World War II generation knew what a Foo Fighter was because that comes from a comic, a very popular, I think it was a Barney Google, something like that. By the way, Google might have taken their name from that old comic strip, Google, now that I think about it. And there's a heavy connection there between Seattle, the national security state, people like Jimi Hendrix, and of course the Foo Fighters, and Paperclip. And of course, it's all tied together by currently the 10 major so-called aerospace firms led by Boeing that are based in Seattle, Washington. All right, you're with me there. So yeah, the Mobsterful, the Pacific Northwest, it's not as heavily populated as other parts, other regions, right? They have major cities like Seattle. Even Portland's kind of small and kind of quaint and homey and has a really nice, intimate feel to it. Salem, which is the capital, it kind of reminded me of Sacramento, a little bit of a sleepy backwater town. Nonetheless, it's a very, very important geographic location for the national security state, for the secret state, for the secret space program, if you will, that whole area up there. And I believe that the grunge scene is, it was organic. There were all these kids who were alienated, smoked dope and drank and slept on each other's couches and learned to play guitar at these live venues. And they were songwriters, and they came from troubled households, and some of them migrated from Eastern Washington, where all the lumber business had kind of been closed down due to environmental concerns, right? Just like the oil industry has been effectively shut down by the globalists so they can monopolize that resource. That was organic. You know, Kurt Cobain was for real. He's a great songwriter. So I'm not taking the quote unquote Dave Gowan thesis that all of this is synthetic. It's all part of the national security state. And you keep hearing, oh, yeah, it's all Tavistock. It's all Tavistock. And again, we're going to hear this. I'm sure in the comments, people say, oh, yeah, Tavistock. It's definitely everything is near. It's the same syndrome that I was talking. It's the Amy or what's her name, Annie Jacobson syndrome. I've created a new consciousness altering syndrome. It's called the Annie Jacobson syndrome. I wrote a book about that on it. It's a capstone. No need to explore it any further. All right. So let's just disabuse ourselves of pre-knowledge and know everything about whatever phenomenon is out there because you read it on some website or some ass clown on YouTube, and I'm one of them because I'm on YouTube here. But I'm more than ass clown. I'll tell you an experience I had yesterday, if I may. I had an email a couple of days ago from an undergraduate. I think she's a junior. She's coming back in next fall. She's graduating in 2023. She's an undergraduate at Yale University, right? Very selective university. Most people know that. And she was reaching out to me on the basis of published work that I did 20 years ago. That's 2 decades ago. I had to take this book off the shelf. This is one of mine, and reread the essay that I did so I can recall what I was up to. But I took the occasion to inform her. She's Chinese American, probably second generation. Her folks are from mainland China. I don't know what city, probably one of the major ones. And she's at Yale University. And those of you in the live chat know all about Yale University, or at least you think you do. At least I think I do. I think there's much more to learn about Yale University, the Russell Trust, and Skull and Bones, and the Anglo-Chinese War. We're only scratching the surface here. And another reason why I'm bringing this out is because I'm often questioned, why is some Oriental dude, some Asian American guy interested in quote unquote European or white history? I always have to try to establish the fact that we've been living in a global system, right? The New World Order is not new. It's been around for 500 years. And I was living in the part of the world where the Dutch East India Company, later the British East India Company, and the Freemasons, they went over to my part of the world and they tried to take it over. But my people, the Okinawans, who know the art of a wushu, they call it kobudo. It's pronounced differently in Okinawa as opposed to Japan. And they had a whole tradition, a martial tradition that greeted the interlopers like Commodore Perry with his cannon. He showed up in 1857, another Freemason, by the way. So I'm very, very much a part of this history. And I'm telling you this because this Yale undergraduate, her people are from mainland China. She knew nothing about the Russell Trust. She didn't know that the institution that she worked so hard to get into was built on the back of this Anglo-American opium human trafficking system, of which tons of coolies, as they were called, were transported throughout India, through Africa, and of course here in the United States, right? And that's why I taught the history. That's why I'm one of the people who are responsible for the real critical race studies, not the phony one today where there's Supreme Court justice who probably has Black Freemasonic, Prince Hall Freemasonic connections if you want to check her out. No one's doing that. They just on InfoWars, they say, oh, she's so stupid. She doesn't know what a biological woman is. No, I think you got to really probe her generational background. I think she's well connected with the power elite, the establishment. All Negroes were not created equal. I'm telling you this. All the groups, no matter how oppressed they might seem, have a ruling elite stratum that all collaborate with the other ones. So the super elite people are not racist. They're multicultural. They, as long as you have money and power and resources and knowledge and information that there can be a mutual beneficial arrangement, they're with you. All right. the other, the street racism is just a control mechanism, and it's a diversion, it's a distraction. Even the multicultural conflict is a total distraction from the real agenda, which is to transform us into cyborgs. Really, I mean, and I know it sounds like science fiction, and don't get me confused with David Steele, right? Who I'm going to be doing a tribute to later on, because I realize that the guy has been maligned purposely, and he's much more of a contributor and much more of an important figure for our purposes, for the purpose of people who want to be free and understand the world and how it operates, than he's given credit for. But when I say, yeah, it's, they're turning us into cyborgs, I have foundational information and research that I won't go into now. That's not today's talk. We're going to talk about the Foo Fighters today that will substantiate what I'm talking about. So don't hang up too quickly on me. I know what I'm talking about. An undergraduate at Yale knows what I'm talking about. And even if she's not acquainted with the deeper history of her own people and civilization, Chinese history, which was brought low after, generations of people from Europe and the Middle East making pilgrimages to the capital, Nanjing. The old imperial capital was Nanjing, where I've been, by the way, and stayed there for an entire week. I've been to Beijing, I've been to Shanghai, Hong Kong, for various areas. I'd like to live there for a year or more to really get a better grasp of it. And I'm mentioning this because not just to justify, which I don't need to do, my interest in all this, but also to point out the fact that part of this talk is about a radical revisioning of where modern civilization and technology came from, right? You know it, and I know it. And the people in the Annenelbe, right, under Heinrich Himmler's direction, the Annenelbe, I don't need to go into it. The people in the chat room, you know more about than I do. But you know that the people of the Annenelbe, and even the Führer himself and all his top men, all the occultist people, they felt that the origins of the advanced super technologies and the origin of the Aryan peoples was in Asia, not in Bible land, not to disparage people who are of the Bible, right? Whether you are Christian or Jewish or Middle Eastern, right? Not to disparage you, not to disparage your tradition, but it's as this book refers to it, another book that I came across, it's Bible centric, right? Because that's what we're steeped in. That's how even if you're not Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, that's part of our popular culture and understanding. And again, don't confuse me with a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a neo-Nazi. I'm reading the areas, and I believe that Christopher Hale's thesis here, it's called Himmler's Crusade, is correct. And he's not the only person to make this argument. Subtitle is The Nazi Expedition to Find the Origins of the Aryan Race. And as these other books that I'll be talking about today, it's not just about the anthropological origins of the human race or the Aryan race. It's also about intelligence work that's being done in parallel to supposedly seemingly innocent anthropological research, right? Going there to measure the skulls of the Tibetan people and their physiognomy, and learning their ritual practices and their religion and all of it, right? And Buddhism, and getting their scrolls and having them transported, right? This is all the work of your incredible German and Austrian scientists of the time, which were, by the way, state of the art. They really, the French are pretty close, but they set the pattern, the mold for the social sciences, anthropological, behavioral sciences that took root in England and North America, the United States, Canada, Australia, and the rest of the world, and Japan and other parts of the world. So As you can see that my agenda today is quite ambitious, and strangely enough, yes, it does relate to Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, because a la Annie Jacobson, who puts a neat bow on everything that we were ever taught from these conspiracy sites, so we don't have to research it anymore. Foo Fighters was named, the group was named so that whenever you hear that term, you won't think about the secret Nazi technology called, guess what? Yes, Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters, or Foo Bombs, FOO, right? Not FU. And by the way, there's Foo balloons. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Foo Fighters and Foo balloons, which was a secret Japanese technology. So when we talk about German technology, you have to talk about Axis, AXIS, Axis as in Italy, the Axis nations, World War II, Italy, Japan, and Germany, the Third Reich, right? And some of their collaborators, right? So-called neutral countries, were very much involved with the whole international Nazi movement back then until this very day, as we're seeing in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So the Foo Fighters were actually something that came out of the comic strips when they were back in the days when they were in newspapers of my parents' generation. And what happened is that these Allied pilots, both British and American, who were in the European theater toward the end of World War II, we're talking about the late 40s, getting into 45 now, 1945, they were confronted with these anomalous flying craft that would make their instruments go haywire, and they would look like a fireball. In fact, the Germans, later on, the documents were produced. They had their own term for it. They called Feuerball, fireball. Feuer is fire. And but the Americans called them Foo Fighters because the pilots were, they watched all the Hollywood movies, read the comic books, and they just used a reference that people would be able to refer to, something out of the ordinary, a Foo Fighter, right? And so the Foo Fighter, the group, was named, I think, I don't know if Dave Grohl is steeped in this information. I don't think he is. I think he's a tool like everybody else. I think from what I can tell, he's very much invested in music and sound physics, acoustic science, which is also part of Nazi and Japanese science, by the way, as Douglas Dietrich lays out. He's one of I'm not going to be able to go through each of these books, but I'm just kind of holding them up so you can read them and you can follow kind of my train of thought visually with these graphics here instead of doing the PowerPoint. But he talks about how Japanese had their own, not like the British radar system, but they had their own acoustic science where they can detect bombers coming through. Even the Enola Gay, they knew it was coming, according to him. Now, whether you want to believe his arguments, that's really secondary. But these technologies did exist here. And Dave Grohl is very much steeped into the occultic practice. When I say occult, I don't mean Satan and ritual science. I mean the hidden secrets of acoustic science, of acoustics. He's a professional musician. Not only that, what also tells me that Grohl, we're talking about, understands the technologies, that he made and he directed, and he was featured in it, a documentary. What was it called? It's called Sound City. Sound City. I think it came out where 2013. 2013. And that's because Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters, and the reason Foo Fighters, if you don't know, I think the people in the chat room know, that's why you're making these comments. You're assuming that I know. Not everybody's watching the knows, but their drummer, right, Taylor Hawkins, 50 years old, died of an overdose. He had 10 different types of pharmaceuticals in his system. By the way, look at my talk that I gave on the steaming sacks of Sackler people, the family, right? The Purdue Pharma that got America on the opioid crisis. Even though, Alex Jones insists on blaming it on the Chacons, right? Yeah, they produce, all these synthetic drugs that emulate the Purdue Pharma product, but most of it's done through prescription, not through illicit channels, right? People like, what's his name? Was it Rush Limbaugh, the guy that went deaf? Yeah, who, tons of, ordinary, upstanding citizens addicted to so-called painkillers thanks to Purdue Pharma. But Taylor Hawkins, I don't know if it was a Purdue Pharma product per se that was in his system, but you get the idea. He was on painkillers. He was an addict. He was 50 years old and a great drummer. I'm not a big I was a Nirvana. I was aged out of the rock scene, but I understood Nirvana and I bought their, the vinyl was still being produced, and I bought their early recordings. I'm very much interested in Kurt Cobain. I still am. In terms of the music, the life, his relationship with Courtney Love, which I'll talk about in a moment. This is all part of the Seattle grunge scene. This is all part of the Boeing synthetic culture, pop culture that they built around them as a protective cocoon to take attention away from the secret Nazi complex out in Seattle led by Boeing. Do you understand? And I'm figuring out that's why the Dave McGowan psyop is so important in this particular line of inquiry, because he's putting it on the counterculture way back in the 60s in a little swathe of land called Laurel Canyon. So it was, Frank Zappa and David Crosby and Jim Morrison. Even though Jim Morrison didn't live in Laurel Canyon, he did hang out in the Chateau Marmont, as I'll talk about perhaps. That's on Sunset Boulevard. You understand? See how that works? That's why when I get in the comments, oh yeah, it's all synthetic and it all had to do with the hippie movement of the 1960s. Even David Hatcher Childress gratuitously refers to the 1960s as a synthetic construct exclusively of the CIA. I'm not saying that they weren't involved. I'm saying that we, the people, have a high degree of autonomy despite the mechanisms of control that are being imposed on us from above. And it's important never to be demoralized by statements like this. Oh, it's all, there's resistance is futile. The internet's going to surveil you. That's what the fear porn's about on InfoWars and Mike Adams. Yeah, lock down America. The virus is going to kill us. He did this 2 years ago, right? And these other jerkwads who supposed, once upon a time, they were providing information to us before the YouTube and the so-called alternative media became a giant cesspool of wannabes who don't know anything. They're newbies who are trying to educate me about material that I already was talking about 20 years ago. The Yale graduates are still researching. And by the way, it wasn't just her, this young lady. I said, where did you find out about me? She was referred to me, Professor Hamamoto, right? Of the University of California, for those of you who are tourists or just passing through. I have the cred. I'm not some guy who taught at a community, not the community college is bad. They're not called professors at community college. They're called instructors, and most of them are part-timers. Most of the people at the universities are part-timers. I was a full-time tenured faculty member. I'm just telling the tourists who say, yeah, you're like Dr. Dre or Professor Griff. It's just a DJ term. No, that's my profession. That was my profession. It still is my profession. Yeah, she got the lead to me, this student from Yale, from a staff writer from the New Yorker. So the person who's talking to you right now in live, ladies and gentlemen, people in the chat room, I'm known at the New Yorker. Okay, that's the highest echelon of establishment journalism that you want to talk about it. And I'll go even higher. I'm known at the Pentagon. I'm known at the Pentagon level, mostly as a crackpot, because that's how they try to understand you. There was a guy that referred the student to me. I've read his articles. I won't give you his name. I even met the kid. He 20 years beyond. He's out of Berkeley. And I'm sure he's connected, because you don't get a job at the New Yorker as a staff writer unless you have some intelligence connection. He comes from a very wealthy family. I knew the student who visited his apartment, and this woman was rich. She was wealthy. She was from Palos Verdes estate. She was also Chinese American, right? Because not all Asian Americans are created equal. I'm from the hood, man. I'm from the ghetto. I'm not one of the new arrivals, the crazy rich Asian people, right? And this woman from Palos Verdes estate went to this New Yorker dude writer's apartment at Berkeley, and she said, "Man, that guy's got bank." She was impressed by his riches, man. So that's how he was placed. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I know who this guy is." And I also know that he's been writing about conspiracy theory. That's why I'm in his head, man. I'm in the head of these people in the New Yorker. Can you dig it? Yes, I can dig it. Talking about Shaft. Yeah. All right. So you know that you've been watching my playlist, right? You know that the intelligence organizations use athletes like Tiger Woods, they use actors, they use musicians, they use anthropologists like Dr. Carlton Gajusek, right? The perverted professor who would bring in all these boys from the Trobriand Islands and then bugger them. He'd bring them in like, a dozen at the time. And he was being investigated. I think he was charged. I think he was convicted, and he split. He left for, I think he wound up in Sweden. This is Carlton Gajusek. And this is my friend, Manny Grossman, who alerted me to him. And I'm interested in people like, because he was an intelligence guy. He was part of the sex trade, the exploitation of children, the trafficking trade. Right, this is Dr. Carlton Gajusek, and I personally know other stories like that. I won't mention their names right now, but they're typically anthropologists. They're homosexual, and they like Filipino boys. They like little smooth brown-skinned boys or little black boys like Ed Buck, the DNC guy, the friend of Adam Shifty Schiff and Ted Lieu representatives, the guy he's in prison right now for drugging and murdering 3 black men, right? This is a sickness among them, and it goes back to the Dutch East Indies overseas public school anality of these people who are without women or any type of sexual contact for months, if not years at a time. And it's also part of their bonding ritual, the sacred anal ritual that these overseas predators engage in. It's part of the building of empires. I've talked about before, right? Buggery, bastardy, and incest is their tripod of power. And each one of these legs are being pulled out from them by you and me as we cover and discuss openly and in public, but not in the classroom, because they're part of the system. They're part of that triad very much. University of California is full of it. And I told this woman at Yale, I said, Yale is run, your corporations are run by pedophiles, people who are involved in multi-generational incest and all the rest of it. That's what keeps the secrets society. So she was just awestruck when I just laid it out for her about the Russell Trust, the Opium Wars. And ironically, she was from China herself. She was in the belly of the beast, because now they turn around and they're recruiting them to be used against humanity in general. You see, it's a multi-generational program that she is a part of, and she didn't even know that she's in the process of being recruited into it. So I referred her to my book, Servitors of Empire. I said, do not fall into the trap, because eventually everybody gets rolled up, right? Case in point, Hunter Biden, he will be rolled up. He's the son of the president of the United States. It doesn't matter, because the president of the United States is not the top banana. There's people way above him. Well, you know this already, okay? So let me continue with Dave Grohl, since you're interested in him. He's got a German last name. Hey, anybody wondering, like I am, paperclip child? Maybe, maybe he's a bastard of one of these, paperclip. Someone should check it out, right? Because people are just looking at it from the Rolling Stone magazine level, right? He's a rock star, and Rolling Stone got taken over by the globalists quite a long time ago. When it was based in New York, when I first started reading it as a stupid little teenager who was interested in the counterculture and the rock and roll and the Doors and all that. I didn't like the San Francisco groups so much. I liked the LA groups and the Chicago blues and jazz people, the New York people. Not so much Jefferson Airplane, and definitely not the Grateful Dead. So you can't really lump me into that LSD bag, the Haight-Ashbury group, right? But Grohl might come from that background. If the old Rolling Stone would probably research it, the new Rolling Stone, again, is about superficial celebrity gloss, right? So check that out. You independent researchers, check out Grohl. Do a research, do a family line, bloodline research. Grohl, he maybe 3 generations. You might find, yes, it was Commandant von Grohl, right? You might find that. Okay, and so where Grohl's professional lineage comes from, most of you. Those of you who don't know, he was the drummer for Nirvana. He was darn good, too. It was only a trio. They had a huge sound for only a 3-piece group, kind of like the Who, except they weren't as, busy. Kurt Cobain was a songwriter first and well, so is Pete Townsend, but different type of songwriting. Grohl was a drummer, and I really didn't pay him much attention. But Kurt Cobain was the driving force, so far as I was concerned, the creative force as well. But then when he died, guess who came to the fore? Yes, Dave Grohl. All of a sudden we found out, wow, he can sing. He's not just a drummer. And then they even put him out front with a guitar. I don't think he's much of a guitar. He probably can strum and like a lot of people can. But I didn't realize he was going to be a leader. So I thought, in the more cynical sense, maybe Kurt Cobain was moved out of the way so Dave Grohl can be brought forward. I don't know. I don't think that's the case, but you can't really roll anything out. But the point is, he did fill that vacuum left by, at least in the minds of the handlers, the controllers, right? What was the name of that? I had a student back then who was very much interested in Sub Pop. There was an independent label up in Seattle that produced their own vinyl. I guess they were 45. It was called Sub Pop. And those were later bought out, by the way, by the corporate Borg, and all the independent producers were eventually bought out because the handlers, the corporation, the true Tavistock, right? Not the British London Tavistock, but the true Tavistock, which is based in probably Stockholm, Sweden, right? Not even the US, understands the power as well as the wealth that's generated and the copyrights, the intellectual property that's generated by these people who they drug up, and eventually by the time they're age 50, they put them out by filling them full of steaming sacklers full of so-called painkillers, which they inflict on them. And sometimes they inflict on them anally, right? You know the story of all the people that came out of this particular movement who were raped, anally raped by handlers. Because by this time, remember, we are living in single-family households, right? This was also engineered to take the man out of the household so that you'd have women who were working 18 hours a day to put food on the table, and you had these young boys running around and teenagers who were vulnerable to evil male, most of them are men, evil older male mentorship, like a prison, like a gang, right? And initiating them into Tibetan Buddhist initiatory anal practices. And that's where, I made the connection between why homosexuality, anal induction, and anality is so important to the British, German, the Anglo-American elite. It's also prevalent amongst the imperial Japan elite and China too, imperial China. They all seem to be, I'm talking about the super elite, not the elites in banking or corporate. I'm talking about the ones with the super long fingernails, right? Those people. And don't have to do anything, include, washing themselves, right? That elite. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Grohl came out of Nirvana and then came up with the Foo Fighters. And I told you the Foo Fighters are emblematic of this secret space program that has its geopolitical presence in the Seattle area, right? If you want further confirmation of my argument, I'm drawing this argument from years and years of watching documentaries, reading books, listening to the music, going to concerts, and practicing cultural forensics, of which I am the foremost exponent because I'm the only practitioner of it, right? I'm the leader of a huge movement of which there's only one member, myself, and whoever chooses to watch these YouTubes, right? So you want to check out Nick Broomfield. Nick Broomfield, he did a film 1998. The title is Kurt and Courtney. We're talking about Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love, right? You know the story. She was taken to Japan and did some, dancing for unsavory types. And her father, they have a strange father and daughter relationship, seems to follow a similar pattern. I won't, not that it's repugnant to me, but I don't have the time to probably, tell you something you know yourself. But I'm just saying that's Courtney Love of Hole, Hole. What a name! What an abased name for an all-female group. Maybe she's trying to be ironic, but maybe she was treated as a receptacle, as a whole herself. She's an interesting artist in her own right. I don't know if I agree with or subscribe to some of the arguments about what she really is and what role she played in the death, the supposed suicide death of Kurt Cobain. All I know is that his death by shotgun was suspicious at minimum. Now, Broomfield, see how this takes us? Right? See why I go off on these tangents? Because reality itself is tangential, right? Reality, the way we live it, is not linear. That's why I like to write books, because then I can kind of mold it into a artificial linear narrative. But when I'm giving these live talks, the brain doesn't fire in that linear way. Try as hard as I may, okay? But Nick Broomfield, the director of not just Kurt and Courtney, but a number of very, very important film doc, I'd like to get him on as a guest. If anybody knows Nick Broomfield, please get in touch. We're going to have you on the show on the live cast. We're going to talk about your documentaries. But he did one on Biggie Smalls, Tupac Shakur, all the usual people you might imagine. Wherever there's death, controversy, Nick Broomfield is there. So maybe he's the Annie Jacobson of documentary filmmaking, right? It's the Annie Jacobson. I have to keep correcting myself because I know the nitpickers amongst the commentariat. You're just waiting for me for a slip of tongue so that you completely miss the important drift of whatever I'm talking about and get down into detail. You are also part of the Annie Jacobson syndrome. So maybe Nick Broomfield, because he's always taking his focus, these documentaries of these controversial characters, maybe he's part of that syndrome, the fear porn, the indie media that takes us in these certain directions and leave us there and drop us off there. By the way, before I go on, there are a number of writers who you've seen on this channel that don't do that, and that's why I invite them on, right? And they're going to be coming back, hopefully, in the future. We saw Pelly Taylor, right? I was not able to get myself on the Zoom camera. That's why I talked so much at the beginning, according to one of you nitpickers told me that I should watch my show because I talk too much. It's because I wasn't on the camera. I was holding up books, right? These are Pelly Taylor's, and I want you to buy them. And I want you to buy the writer, the author, Kirby Summers. I'm talking real fast because I'm running out of time. Kirby Summers has a new book that's about ready to drop. This is April we're talking about. And I got some of the preview of it. Subscribe to her newsletter, if you will. And I've been sworn to secrecy, not to say anything about it. I'm just telling you, it's about Les Wexner. And again, we have and she is the antithesis of the Annie Jacobson syndrome. She she goes further. She starts with the corporate narrative, like the New York Times, the Washington Post. That's where she starts, and then she takes off on her own investing. And not take it from me, she is uncovered some really wild, crazy, fascinating, and real and important for our survival information about the Wexner family. It's more than Victoria's Secret and all them beautiful supermodels with the angel. It's much more than that. So I go beyond. I'm going to be featuring authors like this who are kind of being either boycotted or they're flying under the radar. They're probably too good for mainstream media. You're not going to see them on faux news, Fox News, right? So that's Pelly Taylor and that's Kirby Summers and others that I will have. I'm going to try to get. In fact, I have a phone call. I'm plugging future shows so that you'll subscribe to my channel and get the notifications. But I put in a call to his office, and I got a real person to answer the phone. Put in a call to Adventures Unlimited Press out in Kempton, Illinois, and I want to get David Hatcher Childress on this show. This is one of the books that I was going to allude to, and I've only got 20 minutes left. It's titled How Nebu, The Secret Files, subtitled The Greatest UFO Secret of All Time. And this is where he underscores, I was already reading this book about what the German scientists and the anthropologists, excuse me, were looking for in my part of the world, the Asian world. They were looking for secret science. They were looking for vril energy, VRIL. You've seen the picture of the beautiful woman, Maria Orsic. You've read, or at least you think you've read, Theosophy. You know about Madame Blavatsky. There's tons and tons of material that's nothing but an echo chamber of triviality, because that's one of the strategies of control, right? False consciousness, I guess that's what Marx would call it, but false conclusion, premature ejaculate conclusion, let's call it, a la Annie Jacobson, right? But no, they went into the deep text. They went into the Tibetan scrolls that the anthropologists walked away with and had them translated for the German literati and the intellectuals, including the men of letters, right, writers, journalists, as well as the physicists. That's why they're so advanced. That's why German and Austrian science was so far advanced that the United States had segments of it, you know who they are, had to put a whole program together called Paperclip so that we can get some of that knowledge for our, when I say our, it's not really for us, it's for them, for their technology here, and then transplant it to Seattle, Washington, and put it in the hands of all these incredible so-called aerospace, right? That's really the cover story. SpaceX, Elon Musk is doing, everybody's celebrating now because supposedly he's going to turn Twitter into a true public forum. Don't hold your breath. He's still one of those, just like Dr. Malone, they're still one of those people. They know that there's a mass awakening and public sentiment and awareness because people are reading this material and they're exposed to the reality that's way beyond and way further ahead than mainstream news or independent media. That's Elon Musk, SpaceX. That's where this post-human technology is residing, and it's 70, 80 years old. We haven't even scratched the surface. And you know, just from what I've been alluding to, you know, this is where the whole quote unquote UFO phenomenon originated back in the 50s. And again, I'm not going to rehearse Area 51, retired General or Colonel Corso, and the day after Roswell. We've all read it. We've all been there. And, you know, there's a whole, it's more than a subculture. There's a whole industry that's involved in keeping us locked in to that whole framework. And thank goodness there's 3 books, recent books. They're all published in the last couple of years. And I don't agree with all of them or take them as gospel truth, but they all believe that the conventional story that we've been fed for, well, 70 years now, 67 years about the UFOs, right? Roswell, Air 51, is bogus. These are not alien. These are terrestrial technologies. And according to these books, they come from the Axis nations. Let me go through them very quickly so that you can read these on you. I recommend them because they're very dense. They're very packed with information. It's much deeper than your YouTubers and all the snap experts that have appeared over the past 2 years during the lockdown who said, shoot, man, that looks pretty fun. I think I'll be an expert on UFOs. Here's one's called the Roswell Deception, the demystification of World War II. He's got a couple of different agendas going. One to talk about World War II and its real history, and also the Roswell Deception. This is by Douglas Dietrich, written with Peter Moon. I'm sure Peter Moon had a very strong editorial hand in it because he also edited work from other authors as well. And he's a incredible author in his own right. I'd like to have him on to interview him about his publishing. I guess it's his firm here. It's he did the Montauk Experiment. That's his book. It's the title of the publisher is Sky Books, right? These are the people that have been helping us muddle past or through the type of material that Amy Jacobson is trying to rescue and salvage, because we had publishers like Peter Moon and others, other independent people. You know, there's a whole list of them. There's one out in Washington that used to be good, but I think it's been taken over. I can't remember. There's tons of them. I should do a whole section on as a tribute to these incredible publishers. And then I already mentioned this one here. And then this is probably because both of I don't think, in fact, Dietrich does not mention any of the Childress books. It doesn't mention this particular one, which causes me to suspect his research and scholarship even more. It's really radically flawed. And I don't say that because I have this particular boner against him. I've been on a show a couple of times. He kept on interrupting me every 5 minutes. He's worse than Alex Jones. So I just unplugged myself and say, later, Jack, you've got some deep problems and I don't want to get involved in the beefs and the scraps and the fights that you have with these other people. I don't want to be dragged into it. So thank you, but no thanks. But he does have some important information here. But these are the real books that I think would help us understand the true secret technology that comes from Third Reich physicists primarily, that we're still harvesting here in America and have served as the infrastructure to the New World Order surveillance, eugenics, pharmaceuticals is part of this, technologies. That's why it's so important. This is not just a glimpse back at the sexy Nazi history, right? Because Nazis are part of the pop culture, whether you like it or not. And, you can look, that's why Indiana Jones was created, to show us, oh, yeah, it's just really cool. Indiana Jones is going there. I hate Nazis, right? That's kind of just to throw us off the trail like Annie Jacobs and wrap it up and make it just a little story, right? I put this post for advertising, just to give you an example. I advertised today's talk on this one Facebook group that's supposedly dedicated to Star Trek. And then someone wrote back, says, I'm reporting your post here. This is spam, or you're a troll, something like that. So I wrote him back and say, listen, Mr. Star Trek fanboy, I don't care if you wear that costume on Halloween and you love Gene Dinkleberry and Spock and William Shatner and all those other characters, right? I don't really care, fanboy. The reason why I'm putting it on here, because I'm going to go in on the whole Star Trek. And I know there's some people here are Trekkers, but I hate Trekkers. I hate Star Trek. I don't like Gene Roddenberry. It always creeped me out. I don't even like a George Takei, and my instincts were right about him. man, if I went up to George Takei and researching my book about Asian Americans on television, he might have made a pass at me for all I know. Of course, I figured that he was bent, just like most of the other people who are recruited into those plum roles on television and film. Right, it's supposed to be multicultural. Yeah, they got alien, they got Asian, they got a black woman, Lieutenant Uhuru, and yeah, it's the harmonious world of the future, the not too distant future. No, they're probably just specimens that are being kept around for the amusement of the people who think they're going to survive the 80% reduction of the human population. We'll be chia pets for them, right? Okay, so let me go a little bit into Stephen, since I'm not going to be talking about these books, one by one. Oh, first of all, since I'm on Seattle, let me just finish up with Seattle to show you the other connectivities, all right? And also to finish with Dave Grohl. And because it's in the news right now, the death of Taylor Hawkins, a tragedy. By the way, he's from Laguna Beach. He probably comes from a wealthy family. Check out his background. And that part of Orange County, South Orange County, very much implicated. I did a talk on UC Irvine, for example. Laguna Beach is a hop just right over the hill from UC Irvine, where I taught and got my PhD. And that's where all the professors live, by the way, in Laguna Beach. All the UC Irvine ones, when I went to their parties, their houses, I'd always go to Laguna Beach, and there were these, how could they live on a professor's salary in such incredible, priceless view type environments? Well, they were settled there, just like the paperclips scientists were located in certain areas. So that's where Taylor Hawkins is from. But what group is replacing the Foo Fighters? They were in South America, right? Maybe they were passing on new secrets to the expatriate overseas descendants of the Nazis that settled a lot of Latin America and were put in place to support the dictatorships that were being run out of the United States, out of Langley, right? They were in Latin America. They were in South America when they pulled the plug on poor Taylor Hawkins from Laguna Beach, California, Orange County, the OC. The group, I'll answer my own question, that is replacing the Foo Fighters is none other than 9 Inch Nails. And 9 Inch Nails is synonymous with Trent Reznor. And Trent Reznor is some character that I've been following, not as a fan, but as a research project for a number of years now. And I think we're getting closer to the capstone so far as Trent Reznor is concerned with the Hawkins death here. So I have the recordings. I hate 9 Inch Nails. I hate their music, but I have their CDs, and there's a couple books on them that I'm reading. I thought it was just because I had aged out of that generation's music, and I was just into, Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Rahsaan Roland Kirk and Roy Eldridge and, all these people that I still listen to this day. By the way, Miles Davis was also part of this Black Illuminati group that probably the future Supreme Court justice probably comes out of that same Black ultra elite Masonic Black free Masonic Prince Hall tradition. I think Miles Davis was wrapped up in it. So you see, it's not really about color. It's about power. It's about elite power against the scrubs like you and me, who are just their useless eaters, right? So anyway, let me finish up this story about the Foo Fighters and 9 Inch Nails and Trent Reznor, right? Trent Reznor, who is synonymous with 9 Inch Nails, back in 1994, rented a famous house, a home, an entire home. He was already read in. Trent Reznor was already being brought in by what Dave McGowan would refuse to recognize as the true music cabal that's controlled today. It's not Jim Morrison. It's not Graham Nash. It's not David Crosby. It's not even Neil Young. Neil Young is irrelevant. It's Trent Reznor. All right, you got it. He's still around. He's active. He's going to front Nine Inch Nails to finish out that South American tour for the Foo Fighters. Well, he moved into the Cielo Drive. Does that ring a bell? The Cielo Drive home of, hey, Lisa James got it. Yes, you're right. I have a quality audience. Let me just say that. I'm not just saying that to flatter you. You're ahead of me. That's why I don't really repeat a lot of stuff that you already know, right? But yeah, he was there. Okay, but there's more. There is more. Yeah, Jane Doe knows about Boule. Yeah, that's the black Masonic people that are pimping out black people like Will Smith and Chris Rock. That's the black Boule that be doing that. All right, I'm going to give a talk on the black Boule, and I'm qualified to talk about the black Boule because you know what? I grew up in the black community because I grew up in the area of Los Angeles segregation. I told you the story many times. So I'm probably blacker than Will Smith or all these other people who are honorary inductees to the supposed structure. By the way, the reason why they're highlighting all the African-American celebrities right now, because they're fixing to burn them, right? They being the true handlers of the Fresh Prince. They build you up career, Michael Jackson, Prince, you name it, could be Bill Cosby, and they build you up to bring you down. Right, that's part of the Illuminati formula. So I don't care about the bitch slapping, that's going on at the Academy Awards. Look out, man! You better watch your back because they be coming after you. They're gonna be rolling you up. And brother Steve Coakley, who talked about the Boule, he laid it out. I have they're still there. Steve Coakley, watch that. He's the one. I gotta give my propers to brother Steve Coakley. He's the one who clued me on to the black Boule, and I did my own research, and there's tons of information that's hidden that I have in my possession, and I'm going to share it with you people here because I can see by the comments you'll be receptive to it because you're with me all the way. All right, let me finish. I keep promising you. I shouldn't look at the comments. It just gets me going in these different directions. But the Foo Fighters, Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails. The story's not over. Trent Reznor, he's into the whole, I won't say satanic. I don't know if he's acclaimed or proclaimed or self-identified Satanist, but he does dwell in the dark side. By the way, he does a lot of these film soundtracks, right? Incredibly immersive sound magic, voodoo, if you want to call it, voodoo child, like Jimmy Marshall Hendrix said. His name was James Marshall Hendrix. He come out of Seattle. That was no accident. And Paul Allen, one of the co-founders, supposedly, he was a frontman of Microsoft, has a $50 million museum dedicated to the native son of Seattle named Jimi Hendrix later on, who was recast as Jimi Hendrix by Chaz Chandler, a British musician who was probably connected to MI6, right? Because Mike Jeffries, the Hendrix manager, notoriously was known as being connected with hard guys in intelligence. But let me talk about. So we're talking about sonic alchemy here, which I'm very much invested in. Dave Grohl did this documentary called Sound City, which is about the documentary of him being a sonic alchemist, even though he might not describe him as such. I describe him as such because he bought this famous mixing board, or in England they call them a desk, right? It's a mixing board where you record on the tape and you mix all these incredible sounds and frequencies and balancing. It's an art in itself. It's sound engineering, right? And there are all these famous studios in LA that Dave McGowan would never even know about. That's why that whole book is bogus. He doesn't talk about all the external technology that's involved in creating hit records, including those of Glenn Campbell and Jimmy Webb that I'm studying now. These were the wrecking crew that were doing a lot of this stuff. Anyway, Dave Grohl bought this Rupert Neve, Neve, mixing board, and he made a whole documentary about it. Why? Because Rupert Neve was one of those brilliant British electronic engineers that helped develop the intelligence tools for the British world order. going back to World War I, the interwar periods, and through World War II. Sound technology was instrumental to the whole radar innovation so that they can detect the Luftwaffe coming in for bombing raids. So I have one of these pedals, right? This is a mixing board. You can't see. This is what Dave Grohl bought because he's a rock star, and it's now in his private possession. So he can do all this sonic alchemy that his friends Trent Reznor. If you listen to these albums, it's all about sonic occultism with the Trent Reznor in particular. So I have these pedals, and I have another brand here, Source Audio. I checked out to the engineers who created this. They all come out of MIT, right? And these are just for the little wankers who have 5 million subscribers on YouTube who play guitar and they test pedals and they try them out. And oh yeah, I don't like that. That sounds whack. That's so lame, you know. And they have a huge audience, but they're completely missing the point here. So anyway, this here's another one. This is called a brand called Hologram. This is called the Microcosm, and you could program loops, granules, delays, glitches, phrase loopers. As soon as I can figure out how to wire up my system here in stereo, I'm going to be going live with you people here and doing this work here, this as a laboratory, because I realized with the death of Taylor Hawkins and all the pity and the grief that's going to be going on to Dave Grohl, who's an asset of the Seattle Nazi era, Nazi tech, Boeing, a legacy, right? That's in his hometown of the grunge. We need to engage in an active intervention against this swarm, this huge block of sonic propaganda that we're being deluged by. And hopefully there'll be an undergraduate from Berklee School of Music or the New England Conservatory, right? They will contact me and say, Professor, I'm really interested in your intervention here. Why are you doing it? And I'll just say, Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails. By the way, his studio, he rented the CLO drive home so that he can record his album. I think it was a Downward Spiral, something like that, right? He put a desk in there. He brought in a mixing board. They're huge, by the way, right? I don't know if it was the one that Dave Grohl bought, but what if it is? I bet it is. Not bet, but it might be. That's why they might be connected on a friendly basis on this tour in 2022. Maybe Trent Reznor was using that Neve 808 board. Rupert Neve, check him out, Neve. He is a legend in recording history. Anyway, Reznor named his studio Le Pig. That's what he called his studio, in the house where those people were slaughtered. Not by the Manson family, but by people behind the Manson family. Le Pig. And you know what that refers to, because most of you who have read that literature, I'm not going to, yes, Lisa James knew it. So I don't even have to go there. Thank you very much. It saves me so much time that I don't have to repeat the whole echoing effect of these newbies who say, oh yeah, you got to read Helter Skelter. Oh really? I was alive when that was going down. Right. I was reading the LA Times day by day when they were trying to figure out these wild hippie killers that are on the street. All right. The LAPD, yeah, SWAT came out by Chief Detective Daryl Gates. The whole SWAT militarized police force was rolled out right around that time because people were so scared, saying, well, we need to have better technology for our men in blue. Right. I support the men in blue. I do not support the militarized police force with MRAPs and poisonous gases and beating down people for not wearing a mask or what other flimsy reason. That I do not support. I will resist that. So that's Trent Reznor. That's, that kind of finishes this storyline here. I didn't even get to these secret technologies. There's tons of them. I'll finish up with one more Jimi Hendrix story from Seattle, since we're talking about Seattle, Washington as the Foo Fighter Nazi tech capital of the world. Native son James Marshall Hendrix, otherwise known as Jimi Hendrix, who I'm a big fan of, by the way. I have all his recordings, bootleg and whatnot. And I'm so old, I even saw Hendrix in concert. Yeah, I saw him with a band of gypsies, right? Mitch Mitchell and Buddy Miles, um, and Jimi Hendrix, of course. I think this was in Los Angeles. But he's famous for his revolution in guitar sonics with his Fender Stratocaster. I lived close to the Fender factory, by the way, in Fullerton, California, Orange County. I live in Anaheim, one city over. He's famous for his Stratocaster, but all these pedals, right, like fuzz pedal, distortion pedals, and octave pedals that had never been heard before. These were innovations, right? It's all because of the Seattle World's Fair in 1962, the Space Needle, the University of Washington, all this experimentation. Well, the person that developed these pedals for him, these octavers, and I have them, right? These fuzz pedals, because I like Hendrix. I wanted to sound like him when I was a teenager, right? I still would like to approximate his sound, even a slight percentage of it. It's so difficult to do it. So people think if they buy these pedals, they'll sound like Hendrix. Not really. It's a futile exercise. But the person who designed these pedals, guess what? He was an acoustic engineer, and he was an acoustic engineer with the British Admiralty. And he gave this technology to Jimi Hendrix, just like the Neve mixing boards was inherited or bought by Dave Grohl, but this acoustic engineer gave this stuff to Jimi Hendrix so that he could put these frequencies, these sawtooth square wave germanium transistor first and then silicon transistor frequencies into our lives. And they've been implanted in us ever since then. And we got to unimplant them. We'll keep Jimi Hendrix, but we got to unimplant the secret space Nazi acoustic technology that's still plaguing humanity. And now you see these fools walking around with these wireless earbuds so they can inject it right into their auditory system. They're probably going to be crying out for implantations for music. You got streamed music, streamed 24 hours a day. You've got Google Glasses. Man, it's all coming out of Seattle, Washington. All right, I hope I made my point. I haven't even scratched the surface. I hope you will read up on this area independently and we'll have an exchange. I got to figure out how I can do Zoom so that I can pipe you guys in one by one and you can share your insights. I really enjoy that type of exchange. But remember the title of this talk, ladies and gentlemen, as I wind down here for today. Seattle Foo Fighter Nazi Tech. Yes, that's where it's all about. Watch this over again. Please share it. You know, I'm foundering at 8,000 views, and you got all these people who know how to buy audiences on YouTube. Right? I don't even know how to do it. Not that I would do it, but man, they're enjoying like a million subscriptions by just playing, and usually they're pretty crappy players, playing these pedals for a bunch of other wanker 12, 13-year-olds in their bedroom who want to be the next Dave Grohl or whoever else is out there, some flashy instrumentalist. They're on TikTok a lot. They can play really well for about 15 seconds, and then they run out of ideas. There's always a new a new phenom on the block, right? Jimi Hendrix was for real, and that's of course why he, like Jim Morrison, he's part of the 27 Club. They died by age 27. All right, that's my time. I've gone 8 minutes over. Thank you so much, my beautiful people. We're gonna continue this discussion on Tuesday. I have a lot of reading to do from here and now, and I'm going to share with you some of the best insights that come away from it. All right, keep playing your instruments. Stop listening to recorded music unless it's really good, and make your own kind of music. Do some singing, yeah. Listen to Brian Wilson. Oh, yeah. Tormented, absolute tormented genius who knew the secrets of occult recording technology. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good weekend. Bye.